1:25 p.m, January 12, 2010. As the Superstore car park, Rob Royston, Glasgow. A cold grey afternoon in a busy supermarket car park. Among the ordinary shoppers and idling cars sat a black Audi A3, unremarkable to most. But inside was a man who had become notorious in the Glasgow underworld. In the back seat was 30-year-old Kevin Carroll, known on the streets as the Gerbil, a feared and volatile enforcer with a long list of enemies. He and his crew had been there for over an hour, meeting discreetly with another local dealer, routine business in a world where deals and violence went hand in hand. The meeting ended. One man exited the car and walked away. Moments later, two gunmen approached with cold efficiency. Without hesitation, they opened fire. Several rounds ripped through the Audi, killing Carroll instantly in a hit executed with military precision. Shoppers screamed. One later said she feared it was another Dunblane massacre. Such was the shock of hearing gunfire in a supermarket car park in broad daylight. Carroll's execution was no random act. He had been marked as a liability by underworld figures. A man whose violent alien abductions, where he kidnapped and tortured rivals, had made him too dangerous to keep around. His death marked a brutal turning point. The police response was swift and intense, forcing a temporary lull in the tit-for-tat warfare that had plagued Glasgow's streets for over a decade. But it was just the calm before the storm. One of the names that quickly surfaced in the investigation following Kevin Carroll's execution was that of Glasgow gangster Ross Monaghan. Just 10 days before his partner Jade McLaughlin, heavily pregnant and battling a rare illness, gave birth to their daughter Orla, Monaghan was arrested and charged in connection with the killing. The case against him seemed to hinge on a near-invisible trace. Forensic scientists had discovered a minuscule amount, just 1/10 of a billionth of a gram, of Monaghan's DNA on the handle of one of the firearms used in the hit. But the reliability of this evidence soon began to unravel. The same sample also contained the DNA of a forensic lab technician who had never touched the weapon and worked 3 floors above where it had been stored. Even more troubling, traces from 3 unidentified males were also present. The presence of the lab worker's DNA, despite having no direct contact with the weapon, underscored just how easily DNA can transfer between surfaces, raising serious doubts about its value as solid evidence. Further attempts to link Monaghan to the crime were similarly flawed. A single microscopic particle of gunshot residue was found on a jacket seized during a raid on his Penny home in July 2010. However, this was later discredited when a firearms officer admitted he and his colleagues had attended a gun training exercise earlier that day and had been wearing the same uniforms throughout, likely containing the evidence. As the high-profile trial unfolded, it emerged that Monaghan legally owned a firearm at the time, owing to his status as a licensed gun holder, an unusual technicality that threw yet another wrench into the prosecution's case. Despite the police throwing everything they had at the investigation, they were faced with a wall of silence from those closest to the crime. People who likely knew the truth stayed quiet. Ultimately, the High Court in Glasgow found that there was no evidence placing Monaghan at the Asda Superstore during the time of the shooting. The Crowns claimed that he had helped dispose of the murder weapons and torched a getaway car also collapsed when mobile phone records showed Monaghan was 20 miles away at home. In May 2012, Ross Monaghan was acquitted of Kevin Carroll's murder. But Monaghan's acquittal was not the first time he walked free from charges at the High Court in Glasgow. Back in 2005, Ross Monaghan found himself in the dock, facing serious charges over a brutal stabbing outside a nightclub in East Dunbartonshire. Standing alongside him was Stephen Lyons, son of notorious gang boss Eddie Lyons. The pair were accused of a savage Valentine's Day assault from the year before, during which 3 men were allegedly knifed and left with lifelong scars. But the case collapsed, key witnesses failed to identify the attackers, and Monaghan and Lyons walked free, a recurring theme in their dealings with the law. Both men had deep roots in Milton, a tough district in the north of Glasgow, where gang culture wasn't just present, it was dominant. In the poverty-stricken streets of the 1980s and 90s, crime was often a rite of passage. Drugs, violence, and a sense of tribal loyalty were part of the environment. Monaghan, like many from the area, was drawn to that life young. By his early 20s, he had aligned himself with the Lions crime group, a gang that would become one of the most feared in Scotland. The Lions family didn't just operate in the shadows, they infiltrated the very fabric of the community. In 2000, they took control of the Churnside Community Initiative, a publicly funded centre meant to support locals. With more than £1.4 million in taxpayer funding funneled into the project, it became little more than a front for organised crime. It was a bold move, and it set the stage for a bloody and enduring feud with their rivals, the Daniel crime gang. Even Eddie Lyon's own father got caught up in the family business, eventually appearing in court himself after admitting to over £250,000 in mortgage fraud obtained using bogus income declarations. Monaghan's rise came during the formative years of this violent underworld war. As the Lyons-Daniels feud spiraled into an all-out gangland conflict, Monaghan became a key figure, a trusted associate and reputed enforcer. His name began to surface in connection with drug trafficking, firearms offences, and extortion, although, like many seasoned gang members, he managed to avoid serious convictions for years. In the years since Kevin Carroll's brazen assassination in 2010, a hit that brought national headlines and intensified scrutiny on Glasgow's criminal underworld, Monaghan has kept a much lower public profile. However, by 2017, Monaghan was a marked man, a high-profile target in Glasgow's gangland underworld, and that January he came frighteningly close to death. It was a typical weekday morning in Penilie. Parents were walking their children to school, unaware that just yards away, a gunman was lying in wait, hiding in plain sight with a child's buggy, but the pram didn't carry toys or blankets. Inside was a firearm, concealed and ready for use. As Monaghan approached the school gates, dropping off his young daughter, the shooter made his move. 2 shots rang out. One struck Monaghan in the shoulder, the other missed. Chaos broke out as parents scrambled for cover, but what no one realized was that Monaghan, anticipating danger, had been wearing a bulletproof vest, a chilling testament to the life he was leading. He survived the ambush, and not long after, fled to Spain, a move that signaled just how serious the threat against him had become. This wasn't just a warning, it was a hit, executed in broad daylight, outside a school, and it showed just how far his enemies were willing to go. 2 well-known underworld figures, Mark Richardson and Martin Fitzsimmons, were eventually charged with the attempted assassination. But like so many others in Glasgow's violent gangland history, both were cleared in court. Many believe the attempt on Monaghan's life was directly linked to the killing of Kevin Carroll years earlier, a lingering score in a feud soaked with blood. Carroll, a feared enforcer for the Daniels clan and also from Milton, was notorious for using brutal violence against anyone who crossed him. In 2004, he was charged with attempted murder after allegedly firing an AK-47 at John Madden, an associate of Eddie Lyons Sr., though the case later collapsed. Carroll hit headlines in 2006 after surviving a drive-by shooting in Bishopbriggs. He and associate Ross Sherlock were gunned down outside their BMW X5, a car favoured by gangsters at the time. Carroll was critically injured and placed under armed guard in hospital. Though no one was ever charged, the shooting marked a major escalation in the deadly feud between the Lyons and Daniels clans. While living in Spain, Ross Monaghan forged a powerful alliance with the Irish Kinahan cartel, one of the world's most notorious crime syndicates. Sources say Monaghan personally approached Daniel Kinahan, striking up a relationship that significantly boosted the Lyons gang's influence in Scotland's underworld. That link gave the Lyons crew access to vast drug networks and muscle across the UK and beyond. Monaghan was also connected to Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, a key Kinahan figure and the UK-based boss now jailed for drug trafficking. Between 2016 and 17, Monaghan's name resurfaced in relation to meetings with Kinahan operatives as the cartel expanded its UK reach. Kavanagh was coordinating with gangs from Glasgow, Liverpool, Birmingham, and London, all working together to flood the country with drugs. Even while under pressure from law enforcement, the Kinahan cartel remained locked in gangland wars, calling in favours and firepower from its network across Europe. Monaghan was right in the thick of it, a key player with international ties. Despite Ross Monaghan's meteoric rise through the ranks of the Lyons crew, evading both prison and the grave for years, it was only a matter of time before the life he led caught up with him. That day came last May in the Costa del Sol. While watching the Champions League final with Eddie Lyons Jr. in his own bar in Fuengirola, Ross Monaghan found himself in the crosshairs of a brutal gangland ambush. A masked gunman opened fire outside the pub, killing Lyons Jr. with a single shot in front of stunned friends and customers. The attacker then turned his sights on Monaghan, pursuing him inside the crowded venue. CCTV footage captured the chilling scenes as the gunman unleashed a flurry of shots. Monaghan was hit multiple times as he scrambled for cover, while terrified patrons and staff dove under tables and chairs. In graphic footage later aired by Spanish media, Monaghan can be seen crawling on his hands and knees, desperately trying to escape, but he collapsed moments later, blood from a wound near his heart soaking through his white t-shirt. A fatal end to a life steeped in violence. Shortly after the shooting, Monaghan's family insisted that the Daniel clan had no involvement in his murder. The bitter Glasgow rivals were said to have set aside their differences, convinced that another group was responsible for the killings of Monaghan and fellow clan leader Lyons. Meanwhile, the Irish Kinahan cartel publicly backed the victims, pledging, "We'll get this sorted." Key figures linked to crime boss Daniel Kinahan extended their condolences to the families of the slain crime bosses. Others claimed that Monaghan had a £250,000 bounty on his head due to a feud with the Spanish drug cartel connected to the south of England. The incident also prompted a firm denial from Police Scotland, who rejected claims that the shooting was connected to the ongoing gang feud raging along the west and east coasts of the country in recent months. 2 weeks after the attack, Merseyside Police, with support from the National Crime Agency, NCA, arrested 44-year-old Michael Riley in Liverpool on behalf of Spanish authorities. He is suspected of being the masked shooter. At the time of his arrest, Riley was carrying a mobile phone which was seized by detectives. According to sources, the device contains crucial information about the hit, with data linking Riley to gangsters in Scotland suspected of orchestrating the double assassination. This evidence could reveal that the crime was planned by Scottish-based rivals of the Lyons gang, and is said to connect the murders back to Scotland and the broader Daniel crime organisation. However, it seems Police Scotland were not informed of this discovery and remain out of the loop. This disconnect helps explain the contradictory situation. Scottish police continue to deny any link to the Daniel and Lyons feud, while Spanish authorities insist the killing is connected. Shortly afterward, Spanish officials took a very different stance, claiming that the man they sought to extradite for the double shooting had direct ties to the Daniel crime family. Despite this, Police Scotland stand firmly by their original position, maintaining there are no links to the Daniels, a view echoed by Monaghan's family. It's now believed their information came from officers unaware of the phone's crucial evidence. Recently, an underworld source supported the Spanish police's conclusion about who was behind the Monaghan's bar shooting of the Lyons' top men. The source warned that the violence is far from over, as Scotland's warring gangs brace for further bloodshed in what is the most intense escalation of underworld conflict in years. The chaos began back in March, triggered by claims that Dubai-based gangster Ross Miami McGill sought revenge after blaming jailed Mark Richardson's associates for using counterfeit notes in a botched £500,000 cocaine deal. This war is suspected to intensify, as many are convinced the Daniel mob dispatched the Liverpool hitman, who is part of a larger UK-wide network. He is linked to a criminal group that supplies the Daniels and Mark Richardson with drugs and firearms. That was it for today's video. What are your thoughts on today's topic? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see our next videos.